Welcome to the Conscious Radio Network. Become enlightened, have fun, and tell all your friends and family to share with everyone they know. You can watch us on YouTube and Rumble while following us on Facebook, or find us on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Our podcasts can be found on Libsyn, iHeart, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. Most of all, remember to go to our official website at ConsciousRadioNetwork.com for past episodes, future shows, and scheduling. We also want to welcome our international audience. Don't stop now. Enjoy the community. Subscribe or follow today.
This is the Conscious Radio Network.
Good day, everybody, wherever you might be on this spaceship we call Earth. Welcome to Conscious Radio Network's The Seance. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Paul Mekas. If this is your first time, please click subscribe, like, share, comment, and also don't forget to follow us with all those networks down below. Today, it's not just a formula, it's the formula for miracles. Two-time Amazon #1 best-selling author, his new ebook explores the spiritual technology of movement feedback holography, which combines special quantum field meditations with specific physical movements to easily identify and release old dysfunctional patterns, beliefs, and traumas from the subconscious mind. Let's welcome back to the seance today, Brent Michael Phillips. Welcome back, brother. How you doing?
Excited to be here. This is great.
Awesome. And again, those are awesome guitars back there. So let's do a recap for those who didn't see the or who will be seeing the first time you were on, the last time you were on. How does an MIT trained software engineer become an energy worker?
Well, that's a great question. It's kind of a crazy story. One of those stories, it's true because it's so weird. You couldn't make it up. So the very short version is, starting from the time I was a young boy, I always knew I was a huge nerd. I loved Star Wars and Star Trek and Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, all that kind of stuff, right? And the one thing I really got into as a kid was computers, and specifically programming computers. I actually wrote my first video game when I was 13 years old. And so that was a huge passion for me. And so when I went to college, it was an easy choice. I went to MIT, studied computers. Seemed like the natural fit.
Yeah.
And I really thought that's what I would do my entire life. And long story short, when I was at MIT, that's when I discovered the internet. Which, of course, sounds funny to the younger listeners, but back then, no one had ever heard of the internet, right?
Yeah.
And that was my vision, my passion. Went on to grad school at MIT. I was part of the World Wide Web Consortium, which was super exciting. I wrote some of the code that sits at the foundation of the modern internet. But when I was in grad school, I saw this as my gold rush. And so before I finished my PhD, I left MIT to form a startup company, first to make websites and then video games. And it sounds crazy today, but the very first website I ever built in my life was the website for the launch of the Sony PlayStation, summer of 1995. So that was a really exciting time. I recruited my lifelong best friend and another partner. We were going great guns. After the first year, I had 15 people working for me. We did the website for the PlayStation. We did the website for Disneyland. We did the website for Nissan Motors. We were, doing a lot of amazing projects.
Yeah.
And then started as a project to make a video game based on the technology I'd created at MIT.
Huh.
And I really thought I was going to be a superstar. I was locked in for huge success. And to make a long story very short, after a couple of years of working 100-hour work weeks, my health gave out. I started having pain and weakness and stiffness. And at first I didn't worry too much. I figured out you got some pain, you go to the doctor, they'll give you something for it, right? Well, 3 years later, I could barely work. I went from 100 hours a week to 80 to 60 to 40 to 20 to about 12. And it was right after my video game released that uh, I suffered the huge betrayal that changed the course of my life, which was I finally gotten in to see the head doctor at the Curlin Job Physical Therapy Clinic, which is a really big deal. That's the big
Yeah.
therapy clinic where the professional athletes, the Olympians, they go for all their surgeries and things. And I figured, hey, the head doctor at the best physical therapy clinic on the planet, he'll know what to do.
Yeah.
And I was so excited. I was marking the days on my calendar. I'm like, I'm finally going to get better. I'm finally going to get better. And when I got in to see him, it was just the opposite. I remember he was looking at my files, looked at me, and he just put his hand on his chin and said, well, I'm sorry, son. There's nothing I or any doctor can do here. You're always going to be in pain. You're never going to go to work again. And I was blown away. I did not expect that.
Hmm.
After 3 years of physical therapy, I thought they'd have some solution for me.
Yeah.
Instead, he recommended me for lifetime disability when I was just 27,
Whoa.
which was crushing. And so when I went to tell my lifelong best friend and business partner, I thought he'd be all, Brent, I got your back. Hang in there. We'll get through it together, right? We've been through hard times before.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just the opposite. He was like, well, if you can't work, there's no use having you around. And so again, long story short, I was fired from the companies I had founded. There was documentation forged, and he turned around and sold the website company for millions of dollars behind my back and gave me nothing.
Wow.
And I was left, at 27 years old, I was living with horrendous chronic pain. I could barely move. I was living with my parents because some days I needed help just getting dressed and eating food. And I'd been told by the best doctor around there was no chance I could ever recover. And I'd never be able to work again. And at best, I'd spend my entire life on disability,
Hmm.
which was crushing. And oh, yeah, I had also lost my best friend. And the reason I think he had betrayed me was I found out later he had been secretly dating the woman that I was crazy in love with.
What?
So it was, as they say, a dark night of the soul. Everything went
Yeah,
wrong.
when it rains, it pours.
So
Man.
again, long story, very short. I was depressed. I was drinking. I was using drugs. I really wanted my life to be over. I had a friend turn me on to positive thinking. It's like, hey, Brent, when life's got you down, this is when we need positive thinking. Nowadays, we call it the law of attraction. It's all the same stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vision boards, mantras, go to the positive thinking stage, jump around, right? And so I got really into that for about 6 months, but nothing changed in my life. So I gave up on that. Then I had a friend turn me on to alternative medicine, which actually made some sense to me. They're like, hey, Brent, just because the doctors gave up on you doesn't mean your life's over. Try something else. So I got really into Chinese medicine. I did acupuncture. I did homeopathy. I did cleanses and diets and magnets and all this stuff, right? So long story short, 5 years living on disability with my parents, running around, running up a gigantic credit card debt, doing every form of alternative medicine I could find. And nothing helped me. It was the craziest thing. I just kept getting worse and worse. And it all came to a head when I agreed to have an experimental surgery. And when I woke up from the surgery, my right arm was totally paralyzed.
Mm.
And so that was kind of the rock bottom. And I tried all sorts of things to get my arm to move. It just wouldn't go. I had another surgery. And about 6 months after that, with my arm still paralyzed, my Aunt Lauren kept nagging me to go see her friend Terry. She did some kind of energy healing that had really helped her and made a difference in her life. And I was like, thanks, but I'm not interested. I've been to Reiki healers before and it doesn't seem to do anything. And I just kind of ignored it, right?
Yeah.
And eventually my aunt was like, Brent, go see Terry, have a session with her. Not only will I pay for it, but I'll take you out to dinner. And I was like, all right, I'm sold, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, no problem. So I remember I went to see Terry and I sat across the room from her. And she explained how she was using a process of energy healing involving something called theta brain waves and subconscious blocks. And it was an interesting process, specifically because there was no physical touching. It was all done with the mind. There was nothing that I took or swallowed, nothing, no machines, nothing like that. And she asked me a lot of questions about things that had happened in my childhood and the betrayal by my best friend and all the pain I'd been in and all the money I'd lost and all the disappointment and failure I'd been through and all these things. And I remember thinking, this is kind of interesting, but I'm not here to talk about my feelings, right? That
Yeah.
seemed irrelevant. I'm here because I'm in a lot of pain and I can't move my arm. And so at the end of her hour, she was like, okay, Brent, we're going to heal your arm now. And I was like, yeah, sure. Whatever, lady, right? You in what army, right?
Yeah.
And I remember I'm looking out the window and I was thinking about what I wanted to get for lunch on the way home.
Mm.
And she kind of rolled her eyes and went into a trance. And it was about 30 seconds in. It was the weirdest thing. I felt this loud pop inside my elbow. It's like a little firecracker went off. Similar to the, pops and clicks we all get with aging, but like times 100.
Yeah.
Like resonated through my body. It was like kaboom, right? And I remember I was like, whoa. And Terry had opened her eyes. She's like, okay, let's try your arm. And I did. And I was like, oh my God, I could not believe it. My paralyzed arm from this surgery had instantly healed, just like that. And I remember I was like, oh my God, I don't know what you did, but you have to teach me this. And so that was the day that this very skeptical, analytical, rational, scientific, agnostic got on the path to becoming a full-time energy healing practitioner. And, that led to me where I am today. But I also want to be very honest and clear with the audience that it's not like all my problems were solved in an hour,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That my paralyzed arm from the surgery instantly healed. But the whole mess of issues that led me to that point did not. But I went and I studied and I trained and I opened a business and, slowly, little by little, uncovered what we call the formula for miracles and pieced together a lot of things I learned from Terry. And, it was funny that about 3-4 years out from that, I thought I was doing well again.
Yeah.
I was making money. I was paying off my debt. I had gotten married and divorced and was back out there dating again. And I thought I was doing pretty well. And then it all collapsed again. Another dark night of the soul. Didn't see that one coming. And long story short, 2 things happened. One was I reconnected with a woman I had dated briefly back in the 90s and fell crazy in love with her, but she had no interest and just took advantage of me. And I also had been introduced to a financial advisor who I trusted to manage all my money. Turned out he was a criminal.
Whoa.
And he ended up stealing over $50 million from over 300 people, including me.
God dang.
So just when I thought I was getting my life back in gear, I suffered the worst heartbreak of my life and ended up $1 million in debt. Because not only did he lose all the money I'd given him to manage, he had again gone and taken fake loans against my name and landed me over $1 million in debt. And I was like, how do I pay that off?
Yeah.
And the only path forward that everyone told me was bankruptcy. And so again, I was deep in the darkness. I was unhappy, depressed, suicidal, drinking, using drugs, all that 9 yards. And that's when I met the man who became my mentor, the late Carl Wolf.
Mm.
And that leads us to this movement thing that right before I went bankrupt, the last thing I bought before I filed my bankruptcy was a private session with Carl. And it was my life coach and dating coach, his name is Brian, who had recommended I see Carl. Because he goes, Brent, I had done over 100 hours with him, and my life coach couldn't do anything with me. It's like, Brent, I don't get it why your life isn't working. You got to meet the master, right? And so it cost me over $500. My last $500 before bankruptcy, I booked a session with Carl. And I remember, true story, you couldn't make this up, on Monday, it was Monday, November 10th, 2008, I declared bankruptcy. On Tuesday, the very next day, I met Carl Wolf and had my first movement session. And it didn't go very well at first because I had met him. It was the craziest thing. He wanted to meet me down at the beach at the rollerblade rental station in Venice Beach.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's kind of a weird place to meet for a healing session. But I'm like, okay, whatever, right? So I met him. He had me rent rollerblades and had me put on all the gear And then we went to the parking lot and he videotaped me rollerblading in circles around the parking lot. And again, I didn't see what this had anything to do with my life, my injuries, my pain, the money I had lost, right?
Yeah.
And then we sat in his car and watched the video. And basically, he just kind of ripped me a new one. It was all this criticism about, oh, your energy's off here and you're off there and all this stuff that was wrong. And the thing that was really disappointing was after that, he just sent me home. I was like, are you kidding me? You paid me I paid you $500 so I could rollerblade in a circle and you could criticize me? And I was upset because I wanted him to do something to fix me.
Yeah.
That's what I was looking for, right? I'm like, smack me in the forehead, sprinkle me with fairy dust, right? Give me a supplement, do something to fix me. But there was none of that. And I'm like, it seemed like a big scam. And so I remember I called my life coach, Brian, and I chewed his ass off. I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you? This guy just took advantage of me. I just went bankrupt. I don't have any money, yada, yada, right? And I remember Brian he was very calm. He said, Brent, I understand. Do me this favor. Give it 3 weeks. And if nothing opens up or shifts or changes in your life within 3 weeks, let me know. I'll try to make it right. I'll give you some extra sessions. I'll even repay you if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I remember marking on my calendar, 3 weeks out, call Brian, chew his butt off again, right? And I didn't expect anything to happen, but it was the craziest thing. Within 3 days, I had made over $50,000. And it didn't make any sense. And I remember I called Brian. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. You were right. There really is magic in this guy. And it was the reason this was so crazy was at this point in my life, I had been doing energy healing full time as my full-time career for 5 years.
Yeah.
I had done at least 10 or 15 different certifications. I had learned Reiki healing and pranic healing. I learned Psych K, and I learned UN energetics and matrix energetics and theta healing. I'd learned all this stuff, right? And so when I met Carl and did the movement, it didn't make sense to me. It didn't look like any other kind of healing I had ever done before. But I had experienced some miraculous results. And and so I went on another journey to figure out what he did. And that's why I'm here today. That it took me a long time.
Yeah.
That when I was first introduced to Terry with the more traditional energy healing with muscle testing and block clearings and such, that kind of made sense to me. It felt like debugging software.
Yeah.
But then rollerblading in circles while some crazy old guy videotapes you, that didn't make any sense. And that's why I was so intrigued. And what it came down to was pretty simple. What I discovered, and this took me years of research and study and experimentation, years and years of work, was what I found is that all the self-improvement stuff we do, meditation, energy healing, law of attraction, so on, is really a form of technology. I call it consciousness technology.
Yeah.
It's learning how to develop and use the consciousness given to us. And what I found was that if we look at all the stuff that's out there, we can roughly categorize it in what I would call 3 generations of technology. And so the first generation, with which I'm sure you and all your listeners are familiar with, is kind of your traditional positive thinking law of attraction, right? Think and Grow Rich and things like that.
Yeah.
Napoleon Hill, vision boards, everything from The Secret.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good start. But as anyone who's done that stuff knows, it's kind of overhyped and oversold. Life is not so simple as watch The Secret 7 times and you make $1 million, right?
Yeah.
They make it seem that way. And so there's this whole industry of law of attraction teachers and programs that makes you feel good, but for the most part doesn't really move the needle. And that was my experience too.
Yeah.
So the first generation, I don't spend a lot of time with. You know, I would say if you're curious, go watch The Secret, read Think and Grow Rich, you got it. That's really all there is to it. Things start to get really interesting in what we call the second generation of consciousness. That would be specifically processes that directly access the subconscious mind. That's the big shift. So we get into processes like Psych K, theta healing, UN energetics, emotion codes, healing codes. There's dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of modalities that all work on the similar basis,
Hmm.
that we have beliefs or blockages in our subconscious. And by identifying them and clearing them, we can improve our lives. Very similar to acupuncture. An acupuncturist will tell you, well, there's flows of energy in the body, and then when they get disrupted and blocked off, we get sick. And then they try to use the needles to open up the flow of energy.
Yeah.
So the second gen technologies, which you and I'm sure many of the listeners have experienced, are all versions of that. Many use muscle testing to check for subconscious blocks. Many have a machine or a device or a frequency generator in order to clear them. And the second generation is really interesting because that's where the miracles start to happen. That's where you start to see a lot of what are called the medical miracles.
Yeah.
Things like my paralyzed arm instantly healing. People instantly healing from cancer or diabetes or whatever it may be, right? Lifelong asthma, depression. And so I have found the second gen tools are very useful, especially for physical, emotional health. Great for addiction, great for clearing allergies, things like that. But they have a big weak spot,
Mm.
which is what we might call, it's a bit esoteric to talk about embodiment or charisma or being present. That it's a great thing to be able to clear the subconscious. But if you're not present in your body, your actions still won't have much effect.
Mm. Yeah.
And so
Gotta be
if you want to
present.
make more money, if you want to have better self-esteem, if you want a real transformation of your life, the second gen tools alone don't do it for most people. Again, very powerful stuff. Absolutely worth learning and practicing because we all get sick. We
Mhm.
all have issues with allergies or addictions or moods or these things, right? But when I was introduced to Carl and the movement work, I didn't understand it at first because it was a whole generation beyond anything I'd seen before. That this first and second gen technologies are very much focused on language and words. So, for example, you write out on your vision board what you want to have in your life. We use muscle testing to check for subconscious blocks. But the third generation technology with the movement is totally different. It's very visceral, it's physical, it's immediate. And so what was happening is when I had that session with Carl, the subtitle of the book, Movement Feedback Holography, is How to Triple Your Income by Shaking Your Hands.
Hmm.
But again, I want to be very honest and clear that randomly shaking your hands is not going to triple your income. It's called Movement Feedback Holography. This is the title that Carl and I actually came up with this name for it. He'd been doing it for decades, but he never came up with a name for it. He just did it.
Yeah.
That was Carl. Same thing when he taught his seminars. A lot of people would get up and leave because he would just walk in and start doing the work. No explanation, no background, just do this, do this, do this, right? And so we call it movement feedback holography because number one, it's based on physical movement.
Yeah.
You physically move your body. Rollerblading or skating is one of the movements we use. Shaking your hands is another one. Scooping energy. We do roll-ups. There's dozens of different movements you can use.
Mhm.
But it's based on a physical movement of the body. And you do that movement in the presence of an expert facilitator that knows how to read your energy and give you feedback on what they see.
Mm.
And this is the key part. That when you're given the right feedback, the healing happens instantly and automatically and invisibly. That was different than what I'd done before. Because I remember when I went to see Terry when my arm was paralyzed, she did a process with me for an hour and she said, okay, now we're doing the healing, right? That made sense to me. With
Yeah.
the movement work, there's no healing. You just do the movement and get the feedback. And that's why I was upset after my first session with Carl. I didn't think he'd done anything. But the magic was that if you get the right feedback in the right state of mind, it causes a massive internal transformation. And that's where the holography comes in. That it's kind of wild that this was actually featured in the movie John Wick 4.
Mm.
I thought it was so funny. The line they kept repeating was, how you do anything is how you do everything. And that's why we call it holography, that everything about you and your life contains all the information about you and your life. And so, as an example, many people don't realize, but humans, we are holographic creatures. That we have something like 100 trillion cells that make up our body.
Yeah.
Every one of those cells has your entire genome in it, all of your DNA. That if we look at a modality like live blood cell analysis, which is very interesting, I've done it a bunch of times. What they do is they'll take a drop of your blood, look at it under a microscope, and by looking at one drop of your blood, a good analyst can tell you what's going on with your health. Which is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
They'll look at it and go, oh, your liver's struggling, or your kidneys need support, or your heart's under strain, or whatever it is. Why? We are holographically encoded. Every drop of our blood has all the information about the health of our entire body within it.
Mm.
An iridologist does something similar. It's a modality where they take pictures of the iris of your eye, and by analyzing it, can again tell you what's going on with all of your health in your whole body. Physicists know about this. They call it the holographic principle or the holographic universe.
Yeah.
That the same principles that govern the cosmos govern the DNA of our body. And what it comes down to is a trained facilitator can watch your movement and give you the feedback to tell you what's really going on in your life. And because we are all holographically coded, if you're able to hear it, it can make a gigantic shift in your energy.
And because Carl was giving you that feedback,
yes,
you were listening to what he was saying, but you were
right.
you were probably going, yeah, whatever.
That's exactly what I was
But you were
thinking.
listening.
Yes.
And kind of internally bringing it in, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah. And it's funny. I almost had to meet him after a bankruptcy because I was in such a desperate place. I was open to or willing to try almost anything.
Yeah.
And that is, I think, why I got such great results.
Huh.
I didn't think it would work, but I was willing to try anything because I was so desperate. And there's also an aspect to what we call beaming, which is a meditative entrainment. So really, when you're doing the movement, you have the facilitator is one in training your brain into a learning or healing mode, typically an alpha, some combination of alpha and theta, and then giving you feedback.
Yeah.
So the combination of the meditative entrainment and the feedback with the movement, it's basically, to use a nerdy analogy, it's like reading the source code of your software.
Huh.
You see right into what's running someone's life.
Yeah.
And I'm currently developing with one of my students a library of movements that shows what are the major energies that tend to run our lives and what do they look like. Because when you know how to read the energy, your body knows how to make the shift. That's one of the big takeaways I got. We don't need to understand the healing in our minds. Not so important. But I found that this was really, Carl was the first person I had worked with that put his finger on what was really wrong with me. And it was simple. I had gotten so much in my mind, I couldn't feel my body or the space around me at all.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how many other healers and coaches I'd worked with that didn't even see it.
Huh.
But Carl told me, Brent, he told me, you are more in your head than anyone I've ever worked with. And I've been doing this full time since the 1970s. And that was really what I want people to hear is, if you are a head case like me, that you will get benefits from doing the first and second gen work for sure. If someone I know or me got cancer, that'd be one of the first things I'd do.
Yeah.
Go in, look for the blocks, do the healing, of course. But it didn't move the needle in terms of presence, engagement, charisma, dropping in, identifying kind of that true self we all have within us. But when I started doing the movement work, I actually started to see those results. And long story short, it's the only process I've ever found that can actually get you out of your mind back into your body.
Yeah.
And as the old saying goes, the longest journey a person can undertake is the 18 inches from their head to their heart.
Ain't that the truth?
And that's why I found this to be so amazing. this third generation work, this movement with the entrainment and the feedback, can do things that nothing else can. It can help you to increase your personal power, to build your confidence. And the crazy thing is, it's when I first learned about it, it seemed like a superhero academy. Because
Yeah.
I'd heard all these stories about people, they'd worked with Carl, they'd done his intensive, they'd get a big job, they'd make 5 times as much money, they would heal from diseases and fall in love and all this great stuff, right? So it seemed like a mutant academy I was going to, like in the movies. I
Yeah.
expected to come out with superpowers. But what was so funny is what I found was it's not that at all. It's really just being a more authentic version of who you are, which is crazy, right?
Hmm.
And so for me, and this was just my path, a lot of it was learning to embrace that I'm just a huge nerd. I love the intellect. I love learning. I love fantasy and sci-fi, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
As opposed to having an idea of the perfect person we're supposed to be. It's not that. It's really just being an authentic, genuine version of who you are. And when we learn to get back into our body, that's when the divine kicks in.
Yeah.
And just so most people know, most of the results you'll see is small stuff. Of course, we get into it because we like the big miracles, right? You want to make 10 times more money. You want to heal from cancer. You want to, fall in love and, meet your soulmate. And all that's great. But I would encourage everyone, look for the little stuff too. That's what tells you you're on the right track.
Yeah.
As a great example, one time I was working with Carl, we were going to a retreat in New England and we were on the same flight. So I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
Carl, let's share a ride to the airport. He's like, yeah, that makes sense, right? So we shared a cab to the airport and we got in the back of the security line. And I was like, oh my God, we're not going to make it. Security line is so long, all the negativity right down the rabbit hole, right? And I remember Carl saying, Brent, relax. We haven't missed a flight yet. Let's just wait here and see what happens. And it was the craziest thing. About 2 minutes later, a lady in a TSA uniform walks right up to him at the back of this long ass line, right?
Yeah.
And just says, oh, excuse me, sir. If you want, I can take you and your party through the VIP check-in. There's no line there. And he was like, oh, that'd be great. So she pulled us through the first class check-in. 2 minutes later, we're on our way to the gate, right? And I'm like, hey, Carl, how did you know her? That was amazing. I figured it was one of his clients or a friend of the family. There had to be a connection, right?
Right.
Because again, there was like 400 people in front of us in line. She walked right up to Carl. And I remember it was the craziest thing. Carl looked at me and said, oh, no, Brent, I've never met her before in my life. But things like this happen to me all the time.
Mm.
That's why I want to give everyone a clue. When you're being your authentic self, living who you really are, little things will click and go your way.
Yeah.
That's how you know you're on the path.
Yeah.
And if you can hold that, the big thing is just a matter of time.
The universe recognizes you as authentic
Yes,
and meaningful.
exactly.
You stand out.
Mhm. Yes, because so few people are that. Most of us are totally in our mind, driven by our ego, going after the latest shiny gadget, right? I
Mhm.
need a promotion. I need a raise. I need a new car. I need a better looking girlfriend, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whereas really the answer is if you can just be what you are, be that authentic self, all the little stuff will tend to click and lead to the big things. And what I tell all of my students and clients is it's not a question of whether or not you can achieve your goals. Of course you can. The only question is, will you give up before you get there? Because you can be 90% of the way there and have no idea.
Yeah.
That is just one more step, right? When my arm was paralyzed, it would have been a very easy thing for me to blow it off, to not go see Terry. I'd been to healers, hadn't helped me before, seemed like a waste of time. It would have been very easy to give up one step away from the goal.
Yeah.
Same thing when I met Carl. I just went bankrupt. Would have been very easy for me to say, nope, I'm going to save my last $500. Don't need some crazy old guy to yell at me because it doesn't like how I rollerblade, right? But if you give up, you don't know you're one step from the goal, do you?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
never know.
Yeah.
And, what I would like encourage everyone to know is Many people come to me, I've been called the healer of last resort, because people feel they've tried everything. Usually my clients and students come to me after a long and painful process. They spend all this time, all this money, mostly to be disappointed.
Mm.
Because there are a lot of people in this world that will promise you anything to take your money. But if you're willing to engage the process and look at yourself truthfully, which is the hardest thing.
Yeah.
No one wants to see what's really going on the inside, right?
Mm-mm.
Amazing things can happen. Really, truly miraculous things can happen. But, another thing you'll hear me say all the time when I speak, we don't pick the miracles, they pick us. So is there a formula for miracles? Absolutely. But it's not like you can decide what miracle you want and make it happen. I would say experiencing miracles is like falling in love.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get to control that, do we?
No.
You don't get to control who you fall in love with. Or vice versa. Make life easier, wouldn't it? Right?
Yeah.
But it just happens. It has its own intelligence, its own agenda. Our goal is to create conducive environments for miracles to happen. So, for example, if you want to fall in love, maybe you should get into better shape. Maybe you should join a dating site. Maybe you should go out and go to a singles mixer, things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of those things guarantees you success, but they facilitate the conditions of success.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the formula for miracles is all about understanding, how do we facilitate the conditions for miracles? How do we make ourselves ready for them? And then when it picks you, then you're in for quite a ride. But yes, no one gets to pick their own miracle. What you do is you show up and engage the process, and the miracles will find you.
Mm.
And I'm very proud. I've taught something like 7,000 people healing over 20 some years.
Wow.
I've never once had a client and student who really engaged this process that did not see miracles occur. Every single one does. But again, the kicker is we don't get to pick what, when, or how. So sometimes it's a little miracle, like you got to get through the the long line at LAX in 5 minutes. That's cool, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a big miracle, like your paralyzed arm instantly heals. And because I'm such a head case, I only tripled my income through this work. Others of my colleagues who did the same process did even better.
Hmm.
They got a 5x 10 increase in their income.
Whew.
Why? Simple. They weren't as stuck in their head as me. But, I am, the reason Carl said I'm on this earth is simple, to help the head cases. So if you think too much, if you're too much in your mind, too much ego, trying to figure it out, I think I have a solution for you.
Yeah.
But it is weird and it's scary. The third generation work is not for the faint of heart. You have to really want it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The deep stuff is not for, there's a lot of people that just want to dip their toe in the water, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you like to try healing sessions now and then, the occasional weekend seminar, dress up in your yoga outfit, there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. If that's your entertainment, awesome. But what I do is not as much fun. It's transformative.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to look the honest truth of your ugliness right in the eyes and own it to move forward. And it's crazy how I have a lot of people say, "Oh, Brent, please read my energy. Tell me what's going on." What I've learned is with almost everyone, I have to give them some foundational training first. Because if I just give you the feedback and you're not ready for it, you're going to think I'm the devil and you're never going to want to talk to me again.
Mm.
And I blew up several important relationships in my life doing movement sessions with people that weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
That's why I say, if you're willing to look at the ugliness, to own it, to explore your shadow, as they say in Jungian terminology, this will deliver life-changing results.
Huh.
If you just want someone to give you a hug and tell you it's okay,
Right.
going to be okay, that's great, just not me.
Mm-hmm.
I would not pay me what I charge to give myself a hug. Lots of people can do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm here when you really are serious about going deep. when you want to go to the bottom of the rabbit hole and dig deeper. If that's you, you know what? I'm here for you. As the poet Rumi said, without a guide, a journey of 3 weeks will take 100 years.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why I'm here. That's why I'm doing this show. That's why I've got my website and all these things. I want to find the right people that will benefit from me being their guide.
Mm.
And for a long time, I just wanted to have big classes and write bestsellers and do all that. Nah, that's not so interesting to me anymore. For me, I'm much more interested in finding a very small group of the right people and really working deeply with them to get them to the point where their authentic self emerges.
Yeah.
And then you're really going to thrive.
Now, do you work with people both remotely and in person?
Almost entirely remotely.
Wow.
I've done the first 10 years I did this work, I did almost everything in person. People would drive out to my office, right? The second 10 years I did this, I started doing mostly remote work. Since COVID, I'm close to 100% remote. The only exception is for my Awakening Intensive, which is my inner circle of my most advanced students. We get together for residential intensives maybe 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Where people come out to Las Vegas, we'll spend 2 or 3 days doing really intensive energy work during the day, and then something fun at night. Because, if you're going to come to Las Vegas, you got to have a little fun, right?
Yeah, right. Got to go see the lights, man.
So I'd say, 95, 98% of it is done remotely. And really, it's funny. Only the most advanced work I do people come in person. Everything up to that point. It's even funny that Carl Wolf, when I knew him, everything was in person, right?
Yeah.
Back in the old days, if you attended a seminar, you got on an airplane, you rented a hotel room and a rental car, and you went in person.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 years of his life, he passed away in 2018. Wow. He actually stopped doing his live events in person because he found that the energy work worked better remotely through Zoom and Skype.
Huh.
And that's one of the reasons I work primarily remotely. And it's actually easier to read the energy through high-res video than it is being in a room with someone. Kind of crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty wild. And yeah, it is different. And if you're just looking to dip your toe in the water, check out the book. It's a great overview. Only cost you a couple bucks. Great story. Everything in there 100% true. And I do regular events. I typically do a movement session once a month that's open to the general public. So it's only $20. If you want to join, just go to my website. Go crazy.
Yeah.
The thing I want to offer to everyone listening to this show is if you think you're the kind of person that wants to go deep, if you're really serious about seeing what's going on deep inside, if you're ready for that level of feedback and transformation, what I want to offer to everyone listening to this show is just go to my website at awakeningdynamics.com, and I will give you a free 15-minute discovery call where I'll get on with you one-on-one, get to know a little more about you. Because, again, I only want to be working with people that I know are going to get great results from working with me. So I don't accept everyone. But anyone that's serious about it, I will give you a free one-on-one time to explore what's going on to see if you're a good fit. And only then, once I know you're a good fit, only then we can talk about how we might work together.
Yeah.
And for those that are not a good fit, I'm going to recommend someone else. I may say, hey, not everyone that does a call with me is a good fit. I'd say it's maybe 50-50. So even if you're not a good fit for me, I'm going to point you in the direction of someone that is a good fit for you. There's one thing I've learned is there is no one healer or guide or coach that's absolutely the best. There's only finding the right person for you.
Yeah.
Where you're at this moment in your life.
Wow.
Again, that's what I want to do. I want to find a few of the right people and take them really deep, because I would love to show everyone what they're capable of. And short answer, it's a lot more than what you think. It's a lot more than what you might think.
Huh. Yeah, it's I might be interested. I might take you up on that deal.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yep. Yeah, just go to my website, and there should be a big button that says podcast special. Click on that. If you have any trouble with it, you can always just shoot us an email to support@awakeningdynamics.com, and we're happy to schedule you the old-fashioned way with a human. That works too.
Heck
But
yeah.
yeah, the movement, it is weird. It's different. It's a little scary at first, but it runs deeper and more powerfully than any other system I've ever found. It really can do things that nothing else can. And that's why over time, I'm moving away from teaching the big classes. I have some amazing students that are more than capable of teaching the first and second gen work.
Yeah.
I really want to focus on this.
Mm-hmm.
And that this is not conducive to 100 people in a Zoom room. No. We're talking like 3, 5, 10, 12 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It only works in the smaller groups because, again, there's a much higher level of training and foundation required. And you got to be ready to hear the darkness. You got to be willing to look at what's really going on in your life and own it and dive into it.
Mm.
If you're willing to do that, you're going to do amazing.
Wow.
It's just most of us have to come to a place of desperation before we're willing to do that, right?
Yep.
If everything's going great, you're making lots of money, you're healthy, you have a full life, you probably aren't highly motivated to do the inner work. That's how we all are, right?
Yeah.
If that's you, if you're doing great, awesome. Good for you. I hope it continues. But, keep me in the back of your mind. If you do hit that crisis where everything falls apart, just know there's a reason for it. That the divine never breaks us down just to watch us break.
Mm.
It only breaks us down to put us together to become stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. We messed up somewhere along the line and disconnected.
Mm-hmm. Though I would say in a larger sense, that disconnection was intentional too.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that you have to disconnect to some degree as a teenager to become an adult.
Yeah.
Right? Most of us rebel hard when we're teenagers. And then at some point, usually in our early 20s, we have what I call the parent epiphany.
Yeah.
When you realize, oh my God, my parents are just people. And then you can reconnect with your parents on an adult, mature relationship level. And our spiritual journey is no different. Sometimes we have to push away the divine, the guide, the helping hand to create space to find our own way.
Yeah.
Only then can we reconnect to it at a more mature place.
Mm.
And that's where I think a lot of us have been. Many of my students are either used to be religious or passively interested. Why? Religion isn't going to scratch the itch for someone that needs to do high-level spiritual work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it's funny that many of my students, once they really find their authentic self, many of them are able to reconnect with a religion, and it's fine. It's part of their community, their family, and that's great. Or if it's not, that's fine too. But the point being, my goal with everyone is to help you find that true self.
Yeah.
And it's not just found with the mind and language and thinking. Good luck with that. It's found in the body through movement and shifting our mental emotional state.
Mm.
You put them all together, it's almost unstoppable. The answer to everyone's question, can you help me? The answer is yes. Given if you're ready to engage the journey.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
You gotta be able to submit,
yes.
Release, and surrender.
Yep.
To this.
And I'm sure almost every high-level healer or teacher out there, almost all of us came to it through some kind of big crisis in our lives.
Yeah.
Very few of us woke up one day and said, hey, let's be a healer. That sounds fun. Usually you got cancer. You lost a family member. You went bankrupt. You lost everything in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, because the way I like to put it is you can't fit a new car into the garage as long as your old one is in there, can you?
No.
And many of us try to hold on to the old thing as long as we can. We're desperately cling to it. But at some point, you become willing to let it go. And that's why I said it's important that I met Carl the day after my bankruptcy. I was willing to engage and try weird new things.
Yeah.
Had my life been going really well when I met Carl, had I met him 3 years before, I don't think I would have listened. I've been like, oh, crazy old guy criticizing me? Yeah, screw you.
Yeah.
Would have just forgotten about it, and nothing would have changed.
Yeah.
But yes, this is different. It's weird. There is a steep learning curve. But especially for those that have done a lot of things, if you've been around the block like me, tried lots of systems and modalities, and nothing's really seeming to do the trick, this might be why.
Mm.
That esoteric embodiment, getting in your heart, finding your true self.
Yeah.
It's just short version, it can't be done from the head. Which, by the way, is why Carl liked people to skate. You can't skate from your head.
Mm-mm.
You have to feel it in your body to find your balance. And that's exactly why he used skating.
Yeah.
It forces you to use your body, If you're riding a bike, you can't think, well, gee, I'm going to lean left at a 7.2 degree. No, that's how AIs think, right? That's a computer.
Mm-hmm.
The way a little kid on a bike, you just feel it into the turn. You feel your balance. And that's ultimately what we're trying to create here, is to get people to feel their balance in their life. That the intelligence within your body is 1,000 times more powerful than what's up here in your head. So let's use both. I'm not opposed to the mind or learning or thinking. They're great things. There's just a lot I can't do, right? I love my car. It's amazing for getting around town. But I can't drive from Las Vegas to Tokyo, right? You need a better technology.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, many of my students, they come to me after a long process. So if you're ready for real change and you're willing to do the work, get in touch. I'll talk to you for free.
Cool.
If not, if you want to dip your toe in the water, check out the book. I think the book is amazing. And I'm a little biased since I wrote it. I got a YouTube channel with like 150 videos, lots of fun stuff to learn there. And so I want to, meet everyone where they're at.
Yeah.
Give you the next step forward that makes sense for you. And if it does, get in touch. If it doesn't, no worries, right?
Yeah.
I only have a small capacity to take on new students, like 1 or 2 a month. That's all I'm looking for, right? The rest of the world is going to have to make do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're one of those 1 or 2, this is why I'm here. That there are things beyond what we've seen. To give an idea of how weird this stuff is, when I had my first miracle with Terry doing the 2nd-gen healing work, it was less than 1 year from that session to when I was teaching. Went to the seminars, took the training, the advanced training, teacher certification, practice groups. 1 year later, I started teaching classes.
Wow.
When I met Carl and did the movement, 6.5 years before I started teaching it. That's how long it took me to figure it out.
Wow.
As I say, it is weird. It's different. It's like nothing you've ever experienced before. But hey, one of the fun things we can do is just using the meditative entrainment. I can turn on most people's ability to see energy and auras and past lives with their open eyes within minutes.
Wow.
So there's a lot of fun stuff we can do here too. But ultimately, it's about getting to the inner core, just becoming who you are. It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And not judging it so much. That's what gets in our way,
Yeah.
So you're short, be short. So you're old, be old. If you're green, be green. Pretty simple. But our heads are so full of all this societal mythology and nonsense.
Oh, yeah.
About, I need to look like this or not be that way. Then we end up judging ourselves and get stuck.
Mm-hmm. With all the labels. We're stuck with all the labels and groups. And yeah, it's like, nah, step away, unplug.
And social media has only made it worse.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Everyone thinks that everyone else has a perfect life, huh? Yeah, I can tell you, I've worked with some of those influencers as my clients. Newsflash, their lives are not perfect.
Yeah.
Many of them are miserable beyond what you could understand.
Oh, yeah. It's all a act.
Yep, it's all an act. It's all just a show.
Mm-hmm.
No different than you're watching a scripted drama on TV. And many are miserable on the inside. I mean, I've worked with clients who were sofa surfing and barely have enough food to survive, and others that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's crazy. The wealthy people are not much happier than the poor people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't really matter,
Yeah.
That's why I say it's really ultimately about finding your true self, which you can't find with the mind, right? You got to find it with the heart.
Mm.
Trust me, if there was a way to find it with the mind, I would have found it a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I didn't just go to MIT. I freaking crushed that place.
Yeah.
I set all sorts of records, awards, commendations, right? So if this could be done with the mind, I would have become the emperor of the universe a long time ago. It cannot. So when you're ready to give the ego a rest, there's an old saying in the world of awakening non-duality. The ego is a terrible master, but a wonderful servant. And so when we're willing to take the ego off the throne and let the divine guide us, all those things about you didn't like suddenly become assets. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? All those things you didn't like about yourself, suddenly they become important to your success. And hey, if this could be encoded into a downloadable program, that'd be awesome. I just don't know how to do that. The first gen, second gen work, I know how to encode those into programs. I have an allergy clearing program, has about a 95% permanent success rate. You clear this, you download this, you heal this, right? Only takes 30 minutes.
Yeah.
The movement work, I don't know how to do that. The only way I know how to do it is live, one-on-one with a small group.
Yeah.
But that's where the heavy lifting occurs, And I say triple my income on the book. That was my experience. But some of my colleagues and students have done even better. So don't be limited by the tripling.
Yeah.
You may do even better than that.
Yeah, that's a start.
Yeah, it's a good start,
So before we wrap up the show, what do you have to offer as a takeaway? Well, actually, you already offered that as a takeaway,
Yes.
but a quick words of wisdom aside from the free discovery call, one-on-one.
I would say that for most of us, we're living in a prison constructed out of what we think we know. And so it's all these things you think you know about yourself and the world that creates a prison for us.
Yeah.
My goal is to lead you out of the prison. You may think that you're too old to meet someone, or you're too sick to work, or whatever it is. It's all those things we think we know that cause our downfall. And if we're willing to look at that and let it go, if you're willing to be wrong about your limitations and your negativity, you may be amazed at what happens. And that's why I mentioned the desperation is sometimes necessary.
Yeah.
Because when I was a young man, I thought I knew it all. I thought I had all the answers. I had figured it all out. And so I was resistant to feedback and input. I didn't want to hear it. I thought I knew better. It was only that everything collapsed around me, that if the doctors had been able to get me back to health, you think I would have gone to a healer? Of course not.
Yeah. You got to get in that position to where you have nothing left to lose.
Right. You got to feel like you're willing, when you're willing to let everything go, to die what they call the death of the ego, then you can be reborn even stronger.
Yeah.
Most of us take a big crisis, but not everyone. There are some people that engage the journey voluntarily. And if that's you, awesome.
Yeah.
Huge respect, right? I couldn't have done that. I had to be forced. My teachers had to be forced into it too,
Yeah.
Terry was nearly killed by black mold.
Yeah.
Carl had a Kundalini experience in his 20s that left him paralyzed for 3 years.
What?
Yep.
Wow.
And he found a dance teacher that taught him the essentials of what became the movement. That ultimately it's about getting consciousness back into your being.
Yeah.
And when he was paralyzed, he couldn't feel his lower body at all.
So you're carrying on the legacy.
That's right. And it's crazy that of all the people he worked with over 3.5 decades, I'm the only one he ever gave permission to teach and practice his work.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Never would have guessed that.
Huh.
It would be like, imagine you're a second grade teacher and the class clown that fails every test ends up becoming the valedictorian of their high school. No one expected that, right? But, what Carl said is it took someone who was a major head case to make this work accessible to those that really need it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm here. It was funny. When Carl was alive, people would ask him to explain it. He'd laugh, give him my phone number. He couldn't explain anything. He just knew how to do it. My niche is I will explain it to you and gently guide you on the journey.
Yeah.
And who knows where we're going, right? Even the things we think we want is just another aspect of what we think we know.
Mm-hmm.
That, as any person that's lived long enough knows, sometimes you get this thing you desperately wanted and it doesn't fulfill you. It doesn't do what you expected, right?
Yeah.
And some other little thing shows up that does the trick. That's what I mean by finding your true self. Not everyone needs to make millions of dollars and have a big house and a fancy car and a 3-week vacation to be happy. Many people, you give them that, they're still miserable. My goal is, let's find what fits you.
Yeah.
For some people, it's music. I found that was something I discovered on my journey. Music is my sweet spot. I love going out to concerts.
Mm.
I've been on, 3 vacations in my adult life, but I've been to over 600 concerts.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, right? For some people, it's gardening. For some people, it's Sudoku puzzles. For some, it's bowling. Could be anything. But when you find out that true self and let it free, you're going to like what happens.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
Yep. It
Man.
may take your life in a totally unexpected direction, but that's part of it,
Mm.
That's why, again, if you're willing to let go of what you think you know, there's incredible freedom and reward there.
Yeah.
It's just a little scary. That's all.
Yeah. Be ready. Be ready. It's going to be a bumpy ride. Brett, blessings, my friend. Blessings. Thank you again for joining us again today.
No, this has been great. I hope we can get the word out there. And in my view, if I just find one person that can really benefit from this, then it's a huge success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I might take you up on a session.
Absolutely. Offers wide open.
So, awesome. Brett, again, namaste. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Very, very much for carrying on this legacy. And again, everybody, go check out awakeningdynamics.com. Give Brett a call. Get your one-on-one free discovery call. See if this is good for you. If not, he will appoint somebody else, put you in another direction, but he will most certainly give you a direction to go in. So other than that, thank you again, Brett. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into The Seance on Conscious Radio Network. And until next time, we will see you then.